So if you could tell us exactly what the Mexican government is doing, and if you like, you can even offer your opinion as to really how effective it is, because I think that's an important question.
So one of the most important aspects about the Mayan-on-Chip initiative is the active involvement of government. So because building a sustainable electronic semiconductor ecosystem cannot be achieved by universities or private companies alone, it requires coordinated efforts among academia, industry, and government. So that's why government plays an important role in this initiative and in any other regarding education, right?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Altium OnTrack Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Peterson. Today, we're talking with Nasska Medrano, Global Program Manager with Altium Education, and Professor Johan Estrada from the Autonomous University of Yucatán. They're both here to talk about the Mayan-on-Chip initiative. This is a workforce development initiative happening in the state of Yucatán. I'm very happy to have them both here today.
Thank you, Zach. It's a pleasure being here.
Yeah, absolutely. So every so often we have someone from Altium Education come on, tell us what's going on, either with the program or in some part of the world where folks are doing something interesting. And so today, Nasska and Johan, this is your turn to tell us all about the Mayan-Chip initiative. So I'm very excited to talk to you both about that. But before we jump into that, since you're both new guests, if you could just tell us about your background and how you got into electronics.
Thank you. Well, my path in electronics is probably a little different from what people might expect. I did not begin my career as an engineer. My education is in international relations, international business, diplomacy. And throughout my career, I have worked across education, government, and of course, international development. So when I got attracted by electronics industry, I realized that technology is not only as strong as the people who create it. So across the world, I think one of the biggest challenges facing electronics is, well, not necessarily technology itself, it's developing the talent needed to sustain the future growth, right? So companies are now competing not only on marketing share, but also on engineering talent. So that's why today I serve as Global Program Manager for Altium Education and Training, where I focus on building partnership with universities, with faculty members, with students, and also with government and industry partners. So that's what I do at Altium Education.
Professor Estrada, if you could.
Well, in my case, I've been in the electronics area since my early years of my formation. I have a bachelor's degree in electronics engineering, and then I continued my path doing a master in science in electrical engineering, where I focus on integrated circuit design, analog and mixed signal circuits. And then I pursued a PhD at Texas A&M University, where I also focus in the design of CMOS analog integrated circuits. And I'm now a professor of a computer engineering program. So I'm doing teaching and research all the time in electronics.
So two very different pathways eventually converging and working on this program. So Nasska, your background is really interesting, and it kind of mirrors my experience, not necessarily getting into electronics originally, but finding your way here. And you mentioned human capital and workforce development. And I think that's a great segue into the Mayan-on-Chip initiative. So if you could, Nasska, I'll let you go first. Tell us everything you know about the Mayan-on-Chip initiative.
Of course, thank you. And well, because of the work that I do at Altium Education, that effort and all the teamwork that we do eventually led me to the Mayan-on-Chip initiative, which is one of the most exciting talent development projects I've ever had the opportunity to work in. So let me tell you more about, well, before diving into the Mayan-on-Chip initiative, it's worth taking a moment for me to explain what Altium Education is and why we're involved in programs like these. So Altium is a global leader in electronics design software, as people may know, providing tool used by engineers around the world to develop printed circuit boards, electronic systems, and connected products, right? So through Altium Education, as mentioned, our mission is to help prepare the next generation of emerging engineers in electronics industry. So we work within universities, as mentioned, with government, industry partners, and students to bridge the gap between academia and industry. So, well, about the initiative, that's one of the reasons this aligns so closely with our mission, right? They bring together education, industry, and government to create meaningful opportunities for students while helping building talent pipeline. So the Mayan-on-Initiative is a collaborative workplace development designed to develop highly skilled talent in electronics, embedded systems, and semiconductor in southeastern of Mexico, mainly in the state of Yucatán. So the program was created through our partnership between the Autonomous University of Yucatán, or its acronym UADY, the government of Yucatán, industry partners, and organizations like us, like Altium Education. So the initiative was developed through collaboration between all of the above and other government institutions such as the Secretary of Economy and Labor, the National Employment Service, and, as mentioned, industry partners. So, well, the initiative began taking shape in 2024 through Professor Johan Estrada, and the first cohort launched in fall 2025. So initially, the goal was to recruit 60 students as a pilot test. However, the response exceeded expectations with more than 120 applicants. Ultimately, 90 students were admitted and 72 students successfully completed the program and graduated from the first cohort. So the goal about the initiative is very straightforward. Create a pipeline of engineers equipped with practical skills, and those skills could be aligned with industry needs. So this program combines PCB design, digital circuit design, verification, industry workflow, embedded systems, semiconductor fundamentals, professional certifications, industry engagement, and much more. So students from multiple universities across the region and of course across the country receive training in areas, as mentioned above, as PCB design, embedded systems, semiconductors, so they can gain exposure to real industry practices and professional tools that prepare them for careers immediately after graduation.
So, Professor Estrada, let's jump over to you. It sounds like you were involved very early on in the initiative. If you could just tell us or add to what Nasska has said.
What I could add is that basically this initiative is a response to what the government of Mexico have been pursuing since 2023, when what is called the Mexico Plan was released. And this governmental plan of the government, of the federal government, includes creating and boosting the semiconductor ecosystem. So there are actual plans to back up the creation of new companies that create and design integrated circuits to actually help creating a whole ecosystem that includes also the creation of foundries here in Mexico, and participate in the whole semiconductor chain from the front end to the back end. So this plan of the federal government, have been since the beginning been backed up by universities and research centers and the academia. So here in UADY, we decided that, okay, so we can participate. We have naturally the formation of talent in several areas of engineering related with electronics, like mechatronics engineering, computer engineering, electrical engineering. But we decided that we can create a specific initiative that will help students get some knowledge and skills that are not normally taught in these programs. Or, many times in academia for simulation and implementation of, circuits, they use open source software or software that, is cheap or easily attainable. And not all students are, go directly to the industry with the skills and the knowledge of using professional software. The whole design process of a system. So to better prepare our students, we decided to create this initiative in which students from not only our university UADY, but from other universities, they can participate. And we don't only accept students that are related with electronics. Any engineering student that wants to reconvert or pursue or investigate what is this path of pursuing a career in electronics, they can participate.
Nasska, when we were talking previously, you had mentioned that the Mexican government is getting involved in this initiative. And one thing that the PCB industry here in the US has been attempting to do for quite a few years has been to get more government involvement in PCB education, workforce development, manufacturing investments, those kinds of things. So if you could tell us exactly what the Mexican government is doing, and if you like, you can even offer your opinion as to really how effective it is, because I think that's an important question.
Of course, yeah, and this is a great question. Thank you, Zach. So one of the most important aspects about the Mayan-on-Chip initiative is the active involvement of government. So because building a sustainable electronic semiconductor ecosystem cannot be achieved by universities or private companies alone, it requires coordinated efforts among academia, industry, and government. So that's why government plays an important role in this initiative and in any other regarding education, right? So for this initiative, the government participation has focused on workforce development planning, connecting universities with employers, supporting talent recruitment, facilitating collaboration between industry and academia, and of course, creating long-term regional development strategies. So in the case of Mayan-on-Chip initiative, the government of Yucatán has been involved through the economic development and employment-focused institution, the ones that we mentioned before. That's the Secretary of Economy and also the System of Employment of Mexico in a state level, regional level, and of course at a federal level. So their participation reflects a broader understanding that attracting technology investment requires more than land, infrastructure, or tax incentives, as it usually is, right? So it requires also skilled people. And the government is understanding this critical reality. So the government support is not only helping connect universities, students, and employers to industry partners, it also helps align education with workforce needs. And that alignment is very important because companies do not need graduates with degrees. They need graduates with practical skills in design, in validation, in manufacturing, systems integration, in problem solving, actually. So this initiative is not simply an educational one, it's also an economic development strategy for the country. The vision is to position Yucatán as a technology hub to be capable of attracting advanced electronics and semiconductor investment. So, at a national level, Mexico is also paying more attention to semiconductors as a strategy sector to conversations moving toward talent development, research, and innovation, as Dr. Johan mentioned. So for me, this is one of the most encouraging part of this initiative. Mayan-on-Chip is not isolated. It fits into a larger national regional conversation about how Mexico can move from being seen primarily as a manufacturer to become a stronger participant in electronics design, engineering, and semiconductor-related innovation.
So, Professor, this next question I think is for you because you're really on the front lines, so to speak, of delivering the educational content to students. In your view, do you think the education system in your region or even at your university has historically been adequately preparing students to make their way into the industry or take on these types of jobs that are hoping to be developed through the Mayan-on-Chip initiative?
I would say that historically, the academia, universities here in Mexico have been preparing students to be future engineers that can, at the end, incorporate and work in semiconductor and electronics related companies. However, now we can say that we have a concerted or planned effort to do it systematically and with a plan. to pursue specific goals of how many students we actually want to reach with this type of educational content. So now we are also contemplating the possibility of educating students even at levels that are before college, go to high schools and disseminate knowledge about electronics, so more people can be interested in this type of career paths since their early years. So we are trying to create a more sustainable and impactful reaching method for students to finally reach these careers.
So it sounds like really trying to cultivate that interest earlier and drive that dedication in this field, rather than just having electronics education be a checkbox in a broader engineering curriculum. I think that begs the question, and I'll allow either of you to jump on this, but do you see students gravitating more towards printed circuit boards or semiconductors as their preferred focus as they go through the educational program?
From the perspective of the academia, I will say that it depends on the region of the country that we're speaking about. So normally, western part, what is known as the Mexico, Silicon Valley, Guadalajara, and states that are nearby, have been more focused for many years on semiconductor-related programs, both at the undergrad and graduate levels. There, these semiconductor companies have, been growing, and we have more and more companies that are creating new facilities in that region. On the other side, other parts of our country have been more related to more system level printed circuit board design type of teaching and creating skills for that type of trades in between the semiconductor chain. What I can say is that the interest is growing for both types of formation, both at printed circuit board, assembly, packaging, testing, and also semiconductor and classic integrated circuit design.
So Nasska, maybe for you, working with Altium Education, how have you seen the interest driven by programs like this? Have you seen greater interest in, let's say, more student signups for Altium Education coming from the Yucatán region?
Yes, we've seen those numbers, those stats, and not only from the Yucatán region, Mexico, or Latin America, also from other regions in the world. But that question, the one that you made at the beginning, is something that we hear quite often. And honestly, the answer, I would say, on an industry perspective, is increasingly both. So there's no doubt that semiconductors have captured students' attention in a way that we haven't seen before. They hear about the CHIPS Act in the United States, global semiconductor, artificial intelligence, electric vehicles, and so on. But naturally, because of that, that creates an excitement and curiosity for them, right? But for many students, semiconductors have become the headline story of the technology industry. But what's interesting is what happens once they begin learning more about the field. So that's why Altium Education is dedicated to create programs that could teach these to students. So students quickly discover that semiconductor design is only one part of a much larger ecosystem. So a chip by itself doesn't become a product, right? It has to be integrated into a complete system that can actually solve a problem, perform a function, deliver a value to a customer, to an industry. So this system requires many other disciplines and technologies. It requires assembly, packaging, it requires PCB design, it requires embedded software or systems, it requires power management, as Dr. Johan mentioned, signal integrity, testing, validation, manufacture, and many more. So in other words, semiconductors and PCB design are not competing disciplines, they are complementary. So what we've observed is that many students enter the program saying, I want to work in semiconductors, but as they gain hands-on experience discovering exciting opportunities in PCB design, embedded system, hardware development, and electronic product design, they move also to learn more about PCB design. So I think PCB design in particular is often a very practical entry point to students into the industry because it allows students to work with complete electronic systems. And that way they can see how components interact, how products are built, how design decisions affect performance, and many other stuff, right? But at the same time, semiconductors open the door to areas such as chip design, verification, packaging, processing technologies, and advanced computing architectures. So, well, we're not trying to train students for a single role or a single technology. We're helping them to understand the broader electronics landscape so they can identify where their interests and talents fit best.
Now, one area of electronics design that kind of weaves into all of this, and I think you've both alluded to it briefly, is embedded development. And especially as systems become smarter, maybe they start to leverage more advanced technologies like AI, you start to see more of the fusion that you just mentioned between the kind of classic PCB designer and the embedded developer. And, a lot of embedded developers do PCB design and vice versa. So have you also seen growth in students taking more of an interest in embedded development as opposed to just software development? And I ask this because, in the United States, for the past probably 20 years, we've seen an entire generation of engineering students just go straight into software and, forget about all this hardware stuff. And now hardware has come back in vogue. So I'm wondering if we have the same kind of trend in Mexico.
Yeah, I can say that that same trend can be observed here in Mexico, where students are showing a lot more of interest in embedded systems and implementation of whole systems, and not just be focused on a single part of the system, right? So historically, we have strong programs that also teach embedded systems design, and we have more and more programs being interested in informing students here. What I can say with respect to, for example, what we are doing in UADY, university, is that the update of our programs, specifically the computer engineering program, is creating new opportunities for students to have courses on embedded system design. So you have more strong focus in these type of areas. And I can say that this is happening across the board here in Mexico.
Yes, I agree. And sorry, I would like to add that that's why I don't think the future is PCBs versus semiconductors. The future belongs to those engineer students who have both, who can connect the different layers of the electronics ecosystem. So yeah, it's gaining more attraction every day.
Yeah, I would agree. And a lot of the marketing material that you'll see come out of some EDA companies mentions the bridge between the die, silicon, all the way down to the system level, and kind of the PCB and the packaging being the glue that brings it all together. So yeah, I would agree with you. The students that can kind of move between those different areas to some extent are the ones that are going to be the most successful. So what does the electronics ecosystem look like in Mexico and maybe just in the Yucatan region? Has the ecosystem developed over time from investment in Mexican companies or foreign companies? What does that mix look like?
Mm-hmm. That's a really interesting question as well, because the answer is that the ecosystem is being built by both local and international players, both contributing in different ways, of course. If we look at where much of the recent momentum is coming from, international companies have played a significant role in accelerating the demand worldwide. But global organizations in semiconductors, automotive, telecommunications, software, AI, are increasingly viewing Mexico as a strategic location within North America. So companies such as Qualcomm, Intel, Microsoft, Silicon Labs, Altera, who are also part of this initiative, and many more global companies bring in their expertise or advanced technology requirements, mentorship opportunities, and valuable insight into where the industry is heading, right? So, in many ways, these organizations help define the skills and capabilities that the future workforce will need or is needing. And at the same time, the foundation for long term growth is being built locally as through this initiative, and of course, through other universities, but mainly through UADY, that's Universidad Autónoma de Yucatán, research centers like CC and CIMBESTAF, government agencies, workforce development organizations, and local technology companies are creating the talent pipeline that the industry depends on. So it's also important to recognize, I think, that Mexico is not only developing talent through universities and through research centers, it's home to growing community of technology companies that are contributing to this ecosystem as well. So national or local organizations such as Softec, Kio, Networks, Wiseline are also contributing as well in a local perspective.
From my perspective, I can also say that industry historically have been in Mexico more focused in specific areas of the supply chain, specifically electrical testing and assembly. But I can see now that industry is gravitating now more towards design, pre-silicon verification, and printed circuit board design too. So yeah, definitely the panorama is changing and quickly evolving here in Mexico.
Now, one thing I've heard in the past from a prior guest, his name is Andrew Hubert, and he is a supply chain consultant who frequently works with companies that want to move or incorporate Mexico into their supply chain. One of the things that he had mentioned, not necessarily as a criticism, but more as a comparison to what happens in Southeast Asia, is that when you go to Southeast Asia, you can find the entire supply chain for a product. So if I want to manufacture, let's say a handheld device with a screen, you go to one manufacturer, but they probably know 5 other companies that can give you all of those parts. And within a few days, you've got an entire supply chain plan ready to go. And one of the points he had made about Mexico is that kind of ecosystem doesn't exist yet. Is there a recognition among companies and maybe among entrepreneurs that the supply chain for overall product manufacturing and assembly is going to be really important in order to bring more of that business to Mexico as it moves out of Southeast Asia?
Yes, and I would like to answer to that question and follow up to your point, Zach, is that what's interesting in Mexico is that we are already one of the most developed electronics industry in Latin America. So the country exports more than 100 billion of US dollars annually in electronics products, with along of 80% of those exports going to the United States. As Professor Johan also mentioned, is that we also have a well-established electronics and manufacturing clusters here in the country, such as in states of Jalisco, Baja California, Chihuahua, Nuevo León, Querétaro, and the Bajío region. So nearshoring is definitely one of the major factors accelerating investment and ecosystem development in Mexico today. And as you mentioned, for many years, Southeast Asia has been one of the world's most important regions for electronics and semiconductors manufacturing. Countries such as Taiwan, Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand have built this extraordinary capability across manufacturing, testing, assembly, semiconductors related activities. So those ecosystems remain incredibly important, and we will continue to play a central role in the global technology industry. What we're seeing today is not companies abandoning Southeast Asia. We're seeing companies diversify their operations and reduce the concentration risk. So that's why Mexico is entering the conversation. So for companies serving the North American market and European market, Mexico offers several advantages that are difficult to ignore. In Mexico, we have decades of manufacturing experience. As we all know, we possess a growing engineering workforce. And so products can be moved between design team, supplier, manufacturing, customers much faster than if they were located across the Pacific. So in many cases, it's not a choice between Mexico or Southeast Asia. We think we are seeing that companies are using Southeast Asia to serve Asian markets while expanding operations into Mexico to support other regions such as North America, Latam, Europe.
Sure, that makes sense. I mean, put the manufacturing capacity closer to the customer base, and that certainly improves what you can do and to serve that market, and that makes sense for what you mentioned regarding exports. With I think you said 80% of electronics 80%. Exports. Yeah, going to the North American market. So that's very, Correct. Very interesting. I think next question. So how much of the ecosystem investment has been driven by trends in onshoring versus homegrown investment? Because you've said it's a mix, right? And so I'm kind of wondering, what does that mix look like? Is it mostly onshoring? Is it mostly homegrown investment? Did it kick off with onshoring and that kind of grew the homegrown portion of the ecosystem? I know in the past few years there had been a few very large acquisitions and mergers that were highlighted for multinational manufacturers to set up operations in Mexico.
Exactly. Yes. Well, as you mentioned, it's a mix of both. Actually, here in Mexico, that's what we're seeing. That's what the trend is going to. But what's particularly interesting is that the conversation is evolving beyond manufacturing. So that makes a difference. So companies are no longer asking only, where can we build products? They're asking, where can we find the engineering talent? Where can we conduct R&D? Where can we build long-term innovation capacity? So that's where the talent becomes the deciding factor. As here in Mexico, we already has this strong industrial cluster, and the states I already mentioned, increasingly in Yucatán now with this through this initiative and the support that the government has provided. But the next phase of growth is not simply attracting factories; it's attracting engineering design, embedded system development, semiconductor related activities. So nearshoring, I would say, is the one helping create demand and attract investment. But talent, on the other hand, is what will determine that how much of that opportunity Mexico ultimately captures.
So I think the related question there goes back to you, Professor Estrada. How responsive would you say is the educational system, whether at the university level or at the secondary education level? How responsive is it to the demands of companies for engineering talent?
I think we are seeing a larger aware of universities to respond, to the industrial trends and needs. So we here in Yucatan believe that, for companies to create new facilities and, onshore their companies here, what takes a lot of, things that we can't control. One thing that we believe is a deciding factor and that can tip the balance is, reaching the critical mass of high skilled, engineers that can answer to the needs of the companies. So yeah, we are answering the needs of the companies and industry. I will say that at the undergrad level, this awareness and this response is growing. Normally, graduate level research centers have always been involved with companies and industry. That's why the biggest research centers are located in the same places and states where these big companies are. But we want this type of formation and creativity and skills are being imparted since the undergrad and below. This type of awareness is growing every day. There are many universities that are opening new programs related with electronics and semiconductors.
So I think for my final question, I'll take it back to you, Nasska. I had Ray Callender on, who's the head of Altium Education, a couple times, and he has some pretty strong views about the role of companies like Altium in providing educational resources to engineers, and Professor Estrada, I'm sure you have some good views on that as well. Nasska, I want to hear from you. What do you see as Altium's role in supporting the Mayan-on-Chip initiative and related initiatives that might happen elsewhere around the world?
That's what's happening. Multiple diverse initiatives all over the world across different regions, countries, universities, and of course governments. So I would say that would be a long-term vision for Altium Education as well. So the objective of this initiative, or that's the primary goal, is to create the sustainable talent pipeline that can support a country's growth, well, in electronics and semiconductors over the next decade. So for this specific initiative, by 2030, The hope is to see more universities participating, additional industry partners, expand curriculum offerings, stronger research collaboration, and so. For us, and what excites me the most is seeing students discover opportunities that may not have been visible to them just a few years ago. Many enter the program without fully realizing the possibilities available in electronics, embedded systems, and semiconductors. So today, students are not only graduating with industry relevant skills, they are prepared to contribute to one of the most important technology sectors in the world. So I'm excited about what this means for Mexico. We have an extraordinary talent, strong universities, growing industry support, government that understands the importance of investment in education. And well, for Altium, it aligns directly with our mission, helping prepare the next generation of engineers to build the technologies that will shape our future. So it's not only technology itself, it's seeing students transform their futures.
I can add that it's very important that companies, look forward to cooperate with universities and academia. So I believe that one of the things that highlights of this Mayan-on-Chip initiative is this capacity of being synchronized, government, university, and companies. We've been having support. We've been having support from many companies for this initiative by, mentoring the creation of the educational content and the skills that they want us to transmit and give to the students. And Altium have been doing, a great job with us. They've been, giving all the, all the things that we need regarding software, training of professors. So yeah, this, capacity of academia and industry working together to create and boost the ecosystems is very important. And I would say that this Mayan-on-Chip initiative is one important example of that.
Well, I'm very happy to see you both participating in this so well. And I know that there are going to be other initiatives that come up, and we'll have other folks come on to talk about those as well. But I would like to ask anyone in the audience who has not heard of Altium Education to head over to education.altium.com, learn more about the program. And of course, if you are a university educator, you can find resources there that can help you bring printed circuit board design curriculum into your own courses. Nasska, Professor Estrada, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
To everyone that's out there listening, we've been talking with Nasska Medrano, Global Program Manager with Altium Education, and Professor Johan Estrada at the Autonomous University of Yucatán. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. You'll be able to keep up with all of our podcast episodes and tutorials as they come out. And last but not least, don't stop learning, stay on track, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.